Hi, welcome to our webinar. This one is called Revising with the Reader in Mind, Crafting a Scene. And the students featured in this piece are first grade writers, and we're here with their first grade teacher, Amanda Moore. My name is Katie McKay, and I work with the Heart of Texas Writing Project. I co-direct the project, and I'm a teacher consultant with them. And I also work at Travis Heights Elementary, where I coach teachers of multilingual students, specifically teachers of refugees. And that's how Amanda and I got to know each other this year. Amanda, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, thank you for watching our students grow. My class is very diverse, first grade classroom, very boy-centric, so we have a lot of energy, and we all come from such different, varied backgrounds that it really cast a unique perspective to all of their writing as well. So I'm very proud of what you're about to see.
Awesome. Yes, as you'll see in our other webinars, there's a lot of students from different languages and cultures that are featured in these videos that speak Pashto at home, that speak Arabic at home, Dari, Farsi. So it is really exciting to see how much they've grown and become part of the classroom community that you created this more in your room. So we're going to actually watch kind of on the long end of a mini lesson together. This one, the mini lesson was about revising to craft a scene for the reader. We were talking about how authors can use words to create an image in the mind of the reader. And the demonstration that I used in this case was a teacher model, where I thought of something in my life and I modeled thinking of something and choosing a topic and then actually writing in front of them. And I hadn't really thought it out much before I did it. I tried to do it as much on the spot as I could so that they could really see that process. So maybe I wasn't even that crazy about what I came up with, but the point being that they saw me in the moment coming up with it. So we'll go ahead and watch the lesson, and we can talk about it in a minute.
Another way that we can revise, we talked about one way we can do revision, one way that we can revise is another way to say that, is that we can change the ending to make it something that really sits with the reader, that the reader's like excited when they read that ending. Another thing we can do with revision is we can help paint a picture in the mind of our reader. And go like this, put your hand on your head if you've ever read a book and you felt almost like you were watching a movie because you could see it in your mind. That ever happened to you?
Yes. No. Yes.
So
I'm reading a book and that really happened.
Yeah, so well maybe the pictures sometimes tell you. But sometimes authors try to also use words to help paint the picture in the mind of the person who's reading. Let me show you what I mean. Okay? So I'm going to think about a story that I might write. And I'm going to think about where that story happens. And then I'm going to close my eyes. And I'm going to try to imagine that place. And then I'm going to try to use some words to help you guys imagine what that place looks like. Since it'll be maybe a place you've never been to before. Okay?
The puzzle world.
Oh, I know what I'm going to tell. Ooh, I have a good one. Okay? So the other night, I'm just thinking of a story that happened recently. The other night, last night, but also last week, there was a huge thunderstorm. If you heard that, it was like this. And the thunder was so loud, and the lightning seemed like it was gonna like crash on our house. And we actually walked in the rain, my family, my husband and my two kids and I, and we walked down to a neighbor's house because they said, well, the thing we were gonna go do got rained out. Do you wanna just come over and have some dinner? And we sat on their back porch. And when we sat in the back, it was raining all around us. And the backyard was flooded like a lake. And I'm going to try to close my eyes.
That's what I was my house. That's my house. It was a ride.
So I'm going to try to hold it because you might write about it when you go to your seat, okay? For my story, I'm going to close my eyes and I'm going to think, what was it like? I was sitting in a chair with my back to the rain. And the rain was splashing off of the lake that was in their backyard. The backyard used to have grass, but now it felt like a lake. And the rain would fall onto the lake and splash onto my back. And the thunder felt like it was shaking the house. And the kids decided to run out to this little play area and getting soaking wet. And they were so wet. Oh, I can picture when I'm closing my eyes, I can picture my son Fritz. And his hair was flat and like matted to his head because it was so wet and it was dripping, dripping, dripping. And his shirt was like stuck to his body because he was so wet. He was dripping, dripping, dripping with water. And then he ran over to me and he got really cold because he got so wet. He's like, "You have a towel? Mama, I'm cold." And he was shivering and doing this with his fists and trembling with his arms.
That's how you get
So I'm gonna try to write down some of what I just said. Okay. Now I'm gonna write down, and then you guys are gonna think, and you're gonna talk for a minute. Okay. So we may already be thinking of your stories, but just a second. So I sat in the chair. My back to the lake that was a yard just minutes before. My son ran bravely into the storm. His hair plastered to his head, dripping. He said, "Mama, do you have a towel?" He clenched, that's like this, clenched his fists. Oh, thank you. And use the word tremble that I said when I was talking. So this is what I just did. What you just saw me do is you saw me think of an idea. I was like, oh, this happened the other night. Now your idea might not be the storm. It doesn't have to be a storm. It could be anything, just something that's happened to you before. And then you're going to hold on to it just like Bobby's holding on to it in his head right now. And you're going to close your eyes and you're going to try to picture it in your head. And we'll spend just a second just imagining it. And then after you imagine it, we're going to turn and you're going to tell someone about it. Now here's going to be the tricky part. I want the person who's listening to you to try to remember some of the amazing words, and they're going to try to say it back to you. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So hold on to an idea in your head, something that's happened to you before. It doesn't have to be a store. It could be a party. It could be kind of the grocery store. It could be anything.
Can I
Try to hold it in your head.
Can I do it?
You can think about it in your mind.
I'm thinking
Everybody listen, because I'm going to want to ask people to repeat what Jalen says, okay?
I'm thinking about when I went outside and played and like took my shoes off and went outside.
Can anybody tell us what Jalen said?
She said she ran in the rain and she had her shoes on. She did. And I said I took my shoes off and I know.
So you guys said the same thing, but in different ways, right? So she said she took her shoes off because she went in the rain. So I want you to remember that, Jalen, because those might be the words that you write down when you go to your seat, right? Okay. Jayla, I'm sorry, Jayla. Tell me, what was in your mind? Tell us all, what was in your mind?
Okay, so when I was in class and me and my friend Jayla and Jayla was sitting over there and it was raining hard and we when it was thundering hard, we backed up a little and we got scared and I fell off the chair.
So who can repeat what she said? Who can repeat? What did she say?
When her friend Jella and Jella and Lego, they were sitting on the chair, and then when it was raining hard, it not there until it fell. But I was a student, so I was sitting over there.
Right.
I was chair was I sitting over right there, there.
I know. She's making a good point, because the purpose of this practice is all those details and how important they are. I know where you were sitting. Another part that Bobby forgot was that she backed up because she was so scared, and then she fell back and fell off the chair. So this is what you could write when you go to your seat. Now turn to someone next to you and tell them. My voice cut 3 times. Awesome. Awesome. Thank you for sitting over here when I was clapping. Thank you. So some things that I heard people say, over here we had 2 rain stories, but we also, Ahmed had another story that he thought of, or that he was telling a fiction story, but he was also creating an image in the mind of the reader. He said he was at the grocery store, a big dinosaur came, stepped on the roof, and it broke a hole, and the rain came down through the roof. Can you picture it in your head? So even when you're writing fiction, you can also try to really describe that place so well so that the person reading your story can picture it in their head. If he was hungry, I forgot that part. He's making it up. It's his story. It's a fiction story, which he made it up, right? Fiction means that it didn't really happen, that it's not real, but you can make it seem real by the way that you describe it.
I want to like you tell them, something. Exactly. So now it's time for you guys as writers. And when you go to your seat, or when you find your place in the room, just a second, Bobby, when you find your place in the room that you're going to go to, you can write about whatever you want. One thing I want you to think about as you're writing today is how you can use the same language that you use to tell someone about it. How you can use that really great, Bobby, turn your body. One more second, please. How you can use the language that you use to talk about it and put that in your writing so that when someone reads it, they can picture it in their head. Just like they do when you describe it to them with your words, you put that all down on the page, okay? All right, when you hear the bell.
Oh, I was like I was back in the room. Children crawling everywhere and talking.
Well, you can tell I stretched them a little bit too far in this one. When I watch this one, I think, oh, I should have cut it off. And that's one of the biggest challenges, I think, with mini lessons is keeping it short, you know? And
Yes.
I could feel that they were ready to get started. And as teachers often do, I just kept wanting to say one more thing. So that's definitely something I would do differently. Maybe even also writing a little bit less when I was modeling my own. So anyway, there's lots of different ways I could have made that mini lesson more mini. But
almost a mini lesson within your mini lesson that I meant to tell you is here in your example, you use quotation marks and they see you writing them and you didn't even mention them. You just put them on there. But the following week, some of my kids had just picked that up and started using quotation marks, not necessarily in the right place,
yeah,
you know, but they were interested in trying out that new form of punctuation that they really hadn't. They see it in stories, but we certainly don't explore it in depth in first grade. So it was really neat to see, just by example, what they pick up on.
I think that's such a big point too, because we know we often see so many lists of teaks and we think, how am I going to fit all this in, you know? But there are so many ways of exposing. And then if you had seen them, I mean, you know, that was toward the end of the year, but if you had seen that and then the next day you could say, look what somebody used yesterday. These are called quotation marks, and use their own writing as the example. and not even necessarily going back to our own as teachers, but the kids as examples for each other. Yeah, there's so many different opportunities there. Um, I think one thing that we just do in writing workshop lessons is we do the teacher model. That's kind of like our default for our demonstration. And so well, I think it worked okay here. I think that we could have just as easily picked up a book that did a really good job at describing, or picked up another kid's piece, or just had a student stand up and tell a story orally and repeated it back to them. Um, I could have just had the kids do what they did and tell some stories out loud instead of doing my own example. Because as we'll see in a minute, the story that I chose did influence some of their writing, which still came up with their own stories, but the storm really resonated with them because there had been so many big storms in Texas. And so we see a few people who did that. But they made it their own. We'll go ahead and first, this is actually Jayla's piece, and she does write about some rain, but it's her own story. She absolutely made it her own. She didn't copy anything off the board. She wasn't writing my story, but my story made her think of her own story, which is something that authors do. Can you tell us, who is Jayla as a person?
Jayla, she learns differently from the rest of us in many ways, and we're just starting to figure out how she learns most effectively. But she tries very, very hard, and she has such a great smile and energy that comes through in everything she does. It's just that perseverance, and I think you'll see that. It amazes me how far she's come. This is a child who didn't know her letters and couldn't even remember her own name sometimes at the beginning of the year, and here she is creating, and it's just amazing.
Wow. I didn't know all that about Jayla, but yeah, because you wouldn't think it when you look at what she has to say here. And there's one point in this video, since I've watched it, where I read her writing wrong, but you'll see me do that, and I think she might correct me later. But let's just hear from her.
So will you read your piece to me?
Yes.
Where? Will you read it? Yeah.
At Grandma's house, it was rainy. I walked to the car. It was bad. It was horrible and bad.
Let me tell you something beautiful that you did as an author, Jayla, okay? You used repetition, and then you changed up the repetition. Do you know what repetition means? It means when you repeat something. So I hear a rhythm here. Can I read it?
Mm-hmm.
At Grandma's, it was raining. I walked out the car. It was bad. It was horrible and bad. This part to me is so powerful. It was bad is a short line, and then you add the word horrible and you repeat the word bad. You say it was bad. It was horrible and bad. It's almost like you're correcting yourself. Like, no, it wasn't just bad. It was horrible and bad. And that is really helping us to understand how bad the rain was, how strong it was coming down. And I can remember, it makes me think about, you made me relate to that, the day when it was raining the other day, and I was trying to get to my car, and I could see my car just a few steps away. And I was like, how am I going to get to my car? Because it is horrible and bad out here. It is raining so hard. So Jayla, you're a really effective and talented writer. You're using repetition and varying the repetition in ways that really help me as a reader relate to your writing. Thank you.
So what I misread there was that this word is rainy, not raining, and it makes more sense. I don't know how I missed that, but rainy, and then also that this OT says to, not out. So she'd reverse those letters, but I walked to the car is made more sense as well. So, but yeah, I just love the way that she wrote that.
Mm-hmm. She's just really coming to her own. I'm excited to see what she can do next year as well.
Yeah,
I love that you point out her repetition. And I think it's important. You don't know the difficulties that she has, not just as a writer, but in general. But instead of pointing out, hey, you're missing capitals and periods, and this isn't spelled correctly, you're only praising her and pointing out the really cool things she does. Like, it was bad, it was horrible and bad. And I think that's really powerful for her and for all our students. But she resonates with that. She knows what she can do and what she struggles more with. And so it's really powerful for her to hear where she excels.
This is a book where Hidden Gems, I think I've maybe talked to you about it before, by Catherine Bomer. And that's where I really started learning about this idea of naming the strengths and how to look at student writing as we would a published book, and noticing the beauty in it in that way. And Catherine Bomer, I think, would argue that we don't actually have to correct students' writing to get them to be growing and do better as writers, but that if we keep pointing out all of these wonderful things that they are doing, that their peers are doing, that the authors that they read are doing, then they'll keep doing and start doing even more of those things. And that just sits with me every time I look at a piece, because just the way our world works, the first things that are going to stand out to us are the things that are quote unquote wrong about the writing. It's the way we were trained in our classrooms as writers. It's the way as teachers we feel like we're supposed to always be helping and fixing. But trying to reverse that is like a real exercise, can be challenging. But once we can train our eye in that way, it really is really valuable for the students.
Also, the things that stick with you about any work, published or not, are not the grammatical errors. It's the imagery that the author produces. So I think it's really wonderful how you've been able to show us that without even us teachers guiding us in that way, as opposed to telling us what we're doing wrong. You're just modeling it, those words, and how to encourage and not correct everything.
Well, thank you. Another thing I was thinking of as I was watching this video is I never would have thought of teaching first graders that one way to craft a scene is to use repetition and to vary repetition. We just teach them put more details, and that's what would have occurred to me to say. But I can picture the rain better because she did this repetition of that word, but she doesn't even describe what it looked like. It's just that the rhythm of it really made me even picture the rain more. So I just think that's another, like we were talking about in our other webinar, about if we let it come from the kids, they can surprise us and teach us things. And if we're really open to learning along with them, they do. We'll move on here. This is, but tell us about this student a little bit. This is Ahmed, right?
This is Ahmed. He is one of my Iraqi students. He is very creative, but he's also, his passion is math and science. Writing is not his favorite at all. So we've been encouraging him to really expand more and add that creativity that he has in other aspects to his writing.
Cool. Well, let's see. We're going to get to see also, after we look at this, and we'll get to see how he finishes his piece in another video in a minute. But let's see how it got started.
Okay, so tell me about what's going on here. Will you read it to me?
But I went to a grocery store. Then a big dinosaur stepped on the roof. It was hungry. It's 5 people in the road. It rained.
It rained. So one thing, Nabil, that we were talking about during the mini lesson that you shared was that you were going to try to paint a picture in the mind of the reader. And I'm already picturing it at the grocery store, this big dinosaur, and I see the picture of him. He's going to step on the roof. So if it's raining, and he steps on the roof, what's going to happen? What were you saying earlier when we were on the carpet?
I went to a grocery store. Then a big thunderstorm set on the roof.
Yeah,
It rained.
it rained. Oh, you were going to put that part in there?
Oh yeah.
Oh, you know what? Can I show you something that authors sometimes do? Authors can sometimes use, let me find your part here. Authors sometimes use arrows, and you don't have to erase it. All you can do is, so you have this part, it rained, that you wrote, right? You can just circle that part, and you can do an arrow to point to where you want to move it to. That's another type of revision that you can do. You don't need to rewrite it. You could just change it. You could just, you want to circle it? Did you say you wanted to move this part up? So just put a circle around it rained.
But it's fine. I can put it right here. It's fine.
But you said you wanted it up, right? You like it where it is? Okay, all right.
Well, I like thinking about what was in his head in that moment, because it's possible that he just misread it and didn't want to change it rain to another spot and was just like, no, that's where it's supposed to be. But it's also possible, when I look at his paper, it's immaculate. Like, you know, some kids' papers have streaks, but his is very neat, his spacing, his letters. So I wonder if it would have made him uncomfortable to
It would make him uncomfortable to draw on his paper in that way. He would have started over. Excuse me. He is one of those students that he'll get stymied by trying to perfect something. And that's something that's been a struggle with him. So he may want it up higher, but he's not going to do it unless he starts over.
Yeah. And that's definitely something that then could be a future mini lesson, at least to maybe if he saw some of his peers around him doing that more, he might get more comfortable. But what's also interesting is that his need for perfection does not get in the way of his spelling. You know, it doesn't keep him from writing what he wants to down. He wrote a lot of difficult words in there. He's got dinosaur. You can see that he sounded out went. He was really thinking about that WH goes in a lot of our W words, and he put that in there. It rained. He's sounding it out, and he got quite a bit on the page even before I got over to him. So that's really promising. That's really good to see. There's a lot of research about how students who use invented spelling in their earlier years have actually better reading, I don't want to say scores, but are more successful reading later on if they've done invented spelling in their writing earlier on, which I think is so interesting.
Well, that makes sense. You have to learn how to sound out the words that you create, and you can sound out anything.
Yeah.
And the funny thing with Ahmed is he's actually one of the best spellers. When we do a spelling test, he knows how to spell went when he's asked in a test situation, but to pull it out during writing, it's like it almost overwhelms him, and he thinks he has to think about how to spell it instead of just spelling it.
Well, that's really common, really, for all of us, right? Because our mind is going back and forth between things that we've memorized and things that we know, and then just the meaning that we're trying to put down on the paper. And that it's a great sign that he's thinking enough about the meaning that he's not getting distracted. And eventually, those things come together without us having to think. But you know, like with some other students, we see it really hindering them getting their idea down because they're going back to that, what was the way I spelled it on the test? You know, and really what it is the repetition of seeing it over and over again, that eventually it will start becoming more automatic. Yeah, cool. Well, this one is Talia, and we'll go ahead and who's Talia as a person?
Talia is not a confident student all the time, and she can do a lot more than she gives herself credit for. So one of the things that we work on is not getting stymied by those little things like spelling and punctuation all the time, but just going for it and showing our creativity. But she has just made a lot of progress this year. You know, even you'll see here in some of her spelling and the way that her handwriting, I can tell she's even become a better reader, and you can tell by how she's using her spaces and her spelling, and her handwriting has improved right alongside her reading ability. So it's interesting to see that correlation of taking care in your writing, how it lends itself to being more careful with your reading.
Such an important point. Yeah, that connection between reading and writing. Let's see what Talia has to say here.
So can you tell me what you were writing about?
Okay, so I was writing about thunder and our friends.
Yeah, would you read it to me?
Mm-hmm. When we and my friend, we were scared, I fall down. We were sitting on chair by the window.
And I see how nicely you've drawn this
And
window.
we saw thunder.
The lightning? You saw the lightning coming down and you heard the thunder?
I drawn the picture of the fishes and the plants in my paper I'm writing about.
So let me tell you what you're doing as an author that I really like. You have this setting that you were in. When we were in our mini lesson and you were talking, you were saying how important the place was, right? Where exactly in the room you were. Mm-hmm. The reason it was important you were sitting by the window is because you actually saw the lightning, right? Mm-hmm. That tells us more about why you were scared. And so one thing you said when we were in the mini lesson is you said, why did you fall? Like you saw the lightning and then
it boomed, and then I scooted back.
You scooted back.
And then there was a paper, and then I was looking back, and then I fell off.
So I think that this might be an important detail that we could add, maybe, is that you were sitting in the chair when you saw the storm, you got scared, you scooted back, and then you fell down. And you also used the word boom. And one thing that authors do when they use sound words is they could put the boom in their writing, or it could even be over here by the window.
I was going to do that, but I didn't have enough time.
Do you want to add that now? Try sounding it out like you did the other words. Guess what? That's exactly how you spell it. These things are independent, right? You can do that on your own. Sometimes authors use an exclamation point for a big loud sound, like boom. Do you remember what an exclamation point looks like?
Mm-hmm.
You could put that after boom, and that might even make it, there. Now you've added that detail, and we can tell even more why it was that you might have fallen down.
Mm-hmm. Isn't that interesting how we were talking about her building confidence, and then she looks to me for the spelling, but she could do it all along.
She could do it all along. I like this piece because the day before you came was that big storm, and this is a drawing of the windowsill in our classroom, and I mean that happened just like she told you. And just even seeing the perspective of her drawing, I can tell, oh, you were sitting in that spot, because I can see where the window is in relation to that plant. And it really makes that that story very complete. For me, knowing what she's talking about, oh, absolutely, that makes total sense to me.
I think that her piece could be a mini lesson for the next day to show how text and pictures work together to give the meaning, that she didn't have to write down the plant or the fish, that or even the lightning bolt, but the fact that it's in the picture, you get more information about the setting by the two things working together.
Absolutely.
Yeah, she did. It was a great job. Mhm. So here we get to see how Ahmed ended up finishing his piece, and oh, I love this one. Do you remember this?
Yes.
Yeah, I love the way it ends.
Will you tell me what you ended up adding to your dinosaur story?
I add a person who's eating this, he's saying, then people on the road, then he smushed the grocery store, and then he burped. And he eats all the people.
Will you read the whole thing for me now that you've got this
I
thing on
went
there?
to a grocery store. Period. Then a big dinosaur that's on the roof. Period. It was hungry. Period. It wanted to find people in the road. Period. It rained. Period. It wait. It eats all the people. Then it drips.
You know what you did is you made your reader laugh at the end. This is the scary story. You're at the grocery store just having a normal day. And then this dinosaur steps on the roof and it was hungry and it found people on the road and it was raining.
And it's eating a person.
And then it's eating people, but then at the end it burped. So somehow, do you know what you did?
Is he eating a person?
Yeah. So I see it eating this person here and saying, so what you did really successfully is you had a scary story. You created a scene that was scary. It was making us feel scared. And then you turned it humorous and you changed that end to make us laugh. Is that what you wanted to do? Is that what you wanted your reader to do, to laugh at the end? Yes?
I like to make someone laugh.
Is he somebody that likes to make people laugh?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. He has a sense of humor. And I love that he says period at the end of each of his sentences, because sometimes that's how I read it back to them.
Right. Yeah. Isn't it funny when you hear them start saying the things that you say? Yeah. Well, and
I see he went back even and started capitalizing and adding his periods in. If you go back to the last clip, he did more revision than just adding a sentence. He corrected some of it.
Yeah. Well, that's important. I didn't notice that, but that's an important point to make, where we often teach kids that there's these linear steps to the writing process, but really it's much more cyclical than that. And we go back and we're always making changes as we go. So he's editing even while he's revising, or even while he's drafting. They're all happening at the same time. And that's most often the case with our primary writers, that there's they don't stretch out as long drafting and then go back and revise. It's really all happening. And it is with all of us too. But I think it's even more apparent with our youngest writers that they're doing all these things at once.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I just love that ending. And there's one other thing I think I talked about in another webinar, is this idea of boy writers. I brought this up maybe in one of the primary ones. This is by Ralph Fletcher, but this idea that a lot of our boy writers have female teachers in elementary school. And it is often the case that a female teacher might kind of, potty humor or gross stuff, or, and when we don't laugh or appreciate the humor of boys or appreciate their choices and topics that they might be interested in, it can really turn them off from writing right away, even as young writers. And him, with the dinosaur, and there's a little violence and he's actually eating somebody, but then the burp at the end, there's so much there that we'd be missing out on if he had gotten a message. Because clearly he's a teacher pleaser, with this, how neat he is and what he wants to do right. If he'd gotten the message that those things just weren't really accepted or valued in the classroom, then we could really miss out on the strengths that he has as a writer.
That's a good point.
So we're just going to close with this quote from the book Talking, Drawing, Writing. It's another quote about revision. So revision is just part of what creators and composers do. And writing is about creating and composing. Of course, it always comes back to topic. They won't care to revise to make it better if they're not writing about something that matters to them. And I think that goes for all of those stories that we saw today in this webinar and in the other ones as well.
I think that's why I like that during Writer's Workshop, the majority of the time they're selecting their own topics and they're drawing what they want to draw and writing the words they want to write, and just trying to implement that one skill that we're focused on that day. Because if you give them too many prompts, those prompts don't always speak to everyone. So you're right. Like if you told me I had to write about a dinosaur playing soccer, snooze. I don't want to write that story. But he does, Abdul does, Ahmed does. So it's important to give them that autonomy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Ms. Moore, for working with me this year and for your participation in the webinar. I'm excited for all the teachers that are going to get to learn from you.
Oh, thank you so much, Ms. McKay.